The world. We're streaming live on 3news.com. Catch us on Facebook where this bulletin is streaming live. The handle's 3FM927. Leave a message there. Trust will do the reading for you. Let's get into the top stories for you this evening. And President Mahama advocates for reforms to give Africa voice at United Nations as he describes UN Charter as outdated.
We believe that veto power should not be restricted to only 5 nations. Nor should it be absolute. There must be a mechanism in this House for the General Assembly to challenge a veto. No single nation should be able to exercise an absolute veto to serve its own interests in a dispute.
Meanwhile, the president has been calling for an end to the Gaza conflict as he makes a return to the UN General Assembly. All of that and more if you stay with us here on the bulletin. Plus, power transmission under threat as GRIDCO reveals illegal miners are operating close to its towers, posing a danger to the entirety of the country and to the nation's grid. We have details of these stories, including business, sports, and entertainment, if you stay with us for the next 1 hour. A pleasure that you could join us this evening here on Hot Edition. A reminder, this bulletin is streaming live on Facebook. The handle's 3FM927. Same handles on Twitter as well, also known as X, 3FM927. On YouTube as well, 3FM927. You find us there, follow, and send in a message for us. You can tweet at us with the hashtag Hot Edition or a personal tweet at Mawina Eric, and Truster will do the reading for you. I am Eric Mawina Igbeta, sitting in for Martin Asiedu-Dartey. But let's get into our news summaries for the evening. Christabel Treve is here with those details. Christabel, what do we have?
Thank you very much, Eric Mawina. First of all, President John Dramani Mahama has highlighted the benefits of Ghana's 24-hour economy initiative at the 80th United Nations General Assembly in New York. He said the policy is set to transform the economy, boost investor confidence, and restore public trust in leadership. He noted that when he assumed office in January 2025, the cedi was depreciating and inflation was on the rise. 8 months on, however, he reported that the local currency has appreciated against major currencies and inflation has dropped. Signs, he said, of Ghana's economic recovery under his administration. GRIDCO has warned that illegal mining near transmission lines poses a major threat to Ghana's power network, with some workers reportedly attacked during maintenance. Director of System Operations Engineer Hussein Adams cautioned that the situation could endanger critical infrastructure if urgent security measures are not taken. There is growing frustration and anxiety among parents and guardians who thronged the Ghana National Association of Teachers Hall in Accra to address challenges with this year's school placements. Many had arrived early hoping to secure solutions for the awards, but left the venue visibly disappointed. After hours of waiting, several parents complained that the process only left them with more questions than answers, deepening fears about their children's future. The placement system, which determines entry into SHS, has in recent years faced criticism over limited transparency and logistical hurdles, and this year happens to be no different. Finally, for many persons with albinism in Ghana, stigma, myths, and discrimination continue to hinder their full participation in society. A new situation analysis report has revealed that beyond social exclusion, persons with albinism face widespread challenges in accessing healthcare, education, and decent employment opportunities. The report highlights how harmful cultural perceptions and systematic barriers combine to limit their rights and opportunities, calling for stronger interventions to promote inclusion and equal treatment. We have a lot more, and this on our website, 3news.com. Mawina, over to you.
Many thanks, Christabel, and we're going straight into it this evening because the president has told world leaders at the 80th United Nations Nations General Assembly in New York that the UN Charter is outdated and must be reformed to reflect today's realities. In a bold, blistering speech, the Ghanaian leader insisted that the current structure of the UN is tilted in favor of the permanent members of the Security Council while renewing Africa's call for permanent representation on that council.
Madam President, the UN Founding Charter is outdated when it comes to representation in this August Assembly. The most powerful post-World War II nations are still being rewarded with an almost totalitarian guardianship over the rest of the world. And yet, the first sentence in Chapter 2, Article 1 of the UN Charter declares that the organization is based on the principle of sovereign equality of all its members. If this were true, and was the case, a continent as large as Africa, with its numerous UN member states, would have at least one permanent seat on the Security Council. Furthermore, we believe that veto power should not be restricted to only 5 nations, nor should it be absolute. There must be a mechanism in this House for the General Assembly to challenge a veto. No single nation should be able to exercise an absolute veto to serve its own interests in a dispute. So today, Madam President, I stand here in this exact spot and ask the world, if not now, then when? We demand not only a reform of the Security Council, but also a reset of the global financial architecture, which is currently rigged against Africa. Africa must have a greater say in the world's multilateral financial institutions.
That's the president, and he had a lot more to say in terms of all that's been playing out on the continent and the world at large. We'll take a listen to him, but I also know that Dr. Vladimir Chidanso is joining us this evening here on Hot Edition. Doc, let me just introduce you and thank you as well for joining us this evening here on the Bulletin.
Thanks for having me.
Look, I would just want us to hear from the president or speak to the situation in Gaza, and then I'll come to you for us to begin the conversation on what many are describing as a bold speech.
The denial of visas to President Abbas and the Palestinian delegation sets a bad precedent and should be deeply worrying to all member nations of the United Nations. Ghana recognized the state of Palestine in 1988 and supported a 2-state solution to the conflict since then. And I say, contrary to the claims of some, a 2-state solution would not be a reward for Hamas. It would rather be a reprieve for the hundreds of thousands of innocent women and children and people who are facing collective punishment and forced starvation for no reason other than the fact that they are Palestinian. For nearly 2 years and for the fear of reprisals, we here in this General Assembly have been playing hide and seek with language to find the right words to help us avoid or excuse what we all know is taking place in Gaza. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter what you call it. If it looks like a duck, it swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, well, then it must be a duck. The crimes in Gaza must stop. The crimes in Gaza must stop.
And that's the president. Prof, Doc, I should say, I appreciate you again for joining us. Let's start off with your immediate reactions to the speech as delivered by the president.
Well, as you might notice from the applause, it's a bold speech. In fact, Sarkozy himself was very much worried as to what he said and said Trump was angered by what he said. And he had to walk 30 minutes across the street. It's unfortunate that what is happening in the world today is because of the inaction of member states who are big powers. And the president made it clear what is happening in Gaza. A spade must be called a spade, and he made it clear. And I think I doff my hat for him for making it clear that what America did to Abbas was not acceptable. What the Charter says, the Charter infringement is so glaring. So he made it clear Our problem only lies with the fact that no matter how bold you are in talking about the United Nations, it becomes mere lamentations. Yes, Ghana recognized Palestine as far back as 1998. So we were far ahead of those countries which are now recognizing Palestine. And recognition means nothing. Today, even it doesn't. Why? Because we must carve the place for the Palestinians. We must have a territory. We must go ahead and get a territory for them, spell out the boundaries, and make sure that Israel is moved away from that territory. We haven't done that. And so it becomes mere lamentations. The question about the charter and the veto, this is not the first time Kofi Annan brazenly created a situation where he redefined security in such a way that Africa also participated. I remember most of us were part of the making of Ghana's position, which was adopted at Isowini. The Isowini consensus is the African position. And there we were talking about the veto. It became lamentation. It was thrown away. Why? Because there is a catch-22 over here. And President Mahama must lead Africa to clear away the catch-22. Whatever you do to the charter, whatever you want changed in the charter, will have to go back to the P5 for all of them to say yes. So the veto power is so powerful. So maybe we need a completely new charter. We all approve it before we throw away the old charter. So I believe that he has done so well. He's mentioned a whole lot of things, but they become orientation. We must take proper steps towards them. I didn't hear much about reparation. He mentioned it in passing. But Africa must now, in Luanda next week or so, we are going to have this reparation conference. And Ghana has been spearheading it. We had a conference in 2023 and 2025. So it looks as though Ghana is now taking what we call offensive diplomacy. And that is very, very important. I think he needs to be assisted by all Africa or the global south to be able to change the structure of global discourse.
I see you mentioned a number of the other thematic areas with which I was going to speak to, but I just want us to stay on the UN Charter because you mentioned that it must move away from mere lamentations. I've had the chance to as well. I've listened to Kenya's President, Dr. William Ruto, and he also stressed greatly on a reform of the Charter and then the Security Council, amongst many other things. It's increasingly, we're seeing a lot more of the African presidents begin to make that statement. Will it just be the coming together of these different presidents on the continent and making this statement to see it come through, or we should be seeing a lot more action in terms of emotion being moved or on the floor of the General Assembly, amongst many other things?
We should cut more friendlier countries of the South to be able to have a new global charter completely so that we get away from this. As I'm saying, amending the charter and giving Africa a representation on a veto representation doesn't change anything. So we are only just adding to the woes. It goes back to everything that we say about Israel, and you get one African country to say no, or one European country to say no. Meanwhile, all those who are fighting for seats, remember Japan, the US, Germany, and Japan, Germany, Brazil are all trying to find a way to become veto powers. And that's not what is needed. So we must move. There must be a real movement for saving the world. You know, in times of crisis, the world meets to create a multilateral organization. In 1648, we did that. Then came World War I, we did that to establish the League of Nations. World War II, we did that to establish the current UN system. But after the Cold War was a defining metaphor for conducting international relations. After the Cold War ended, we haven't met to really change the structure of the world, the structure of governing the world. And that is the problem. We are still under the 1945 kind of charter, which tried to ameliorate the situation in 1945. So one president said it's outdated, but it doesn't need just an amendment because the catch-22 will catch us. Because we'll just have to change that, make amendments, give more, expand the Security Council, whatever it is, but then the 5 members will have to say yes in unison, which will never happen.
Right, Doc, let me also bring in another doctor on the other telephone line, Dr. Jonathan Asiedu-Dartey, who's also joining us this evening for the commentary and also analysis of what it is that we've been hearing from the president. He's a political analyst as well, and so perhaps we'll look at it from the political lenses as well. But I just want to pick it a notch higher with you as well, Dr. Vladimir, on the exploitation bit as well that we heard the president speak to, amongst many other things. He says that going forward, we should not have a case where the African continent is cutting away huge resources for exploitation by the West, and we get patterns as a result of that.
Well, he was very, very right. That is a financial kind of architecture we have in the world. But as I've always said, and I've published a few articles on this, as I've always said, if it remains just lamentation, it will just remain. How is Africa ganging up together to ensure that this exploitation stops? Look at what the Association of Sahelian countries are doing. Action, action, action. And it's playing. They are getting it right. If Africa would do this, collective Africa, 54 countries, would do this, are we all going to be enslaved or going to be, what will happen to us? But unfortunately, a lot of our leadership just want their bread buttered well and soaked well. And therefore, there's no collective serious African action. So he's very right. But it is because of the structure of the world, as I've always said. If we don't change this structure by action, they'll continue to exploit us.
Dr. Jonathan Asiedu-Dartey, I'll come to you now on what you've made of the president's speech and also what has been criticism of some sort from the minority even before the speech about the country's foreign relations and policy in perspective.
Well, let me say good evening to your listeners and to your good self and my senior out there. I think that when it comes to the United Nations and the presidents that deliver various speeches, I think that they've all given some form of flamboyant speeches over the period. What remains to be done is the action bit. And an African continent in which even within West Africa, going to another West African country becomes a problem. And we still talk, on big issues. In actual fact, the issues that our president, has delineated over there, of course, they are spot on. In a situation where we all don't have the same rights in terms of vetoing, then it means that it's a bit problematic. But the other aspect of the same point, which I look at it from a cynical perspective, is the fact that if you do not put in much, if you don't have much to give at that place, then I'm not too sure you'll be among those who call the shots. It is often said that he who calls the piper calls the tin or something of that sort. And so we cannot only give flamboyant speeches not backed by our resources. Do we have that? We don't. The architecture of our economy is such that we are in perpetuity in some kind of debt. And so you have your people to lead, and they are hungry. So you are more concerned about the hunger of the people than to think big and to go beyond your station. In their case, they've been able to develop their economy in their country in such a way that the rest is just time for luxury. And they will be able to engage in things of that nature when you are here thinking about bread and butter. So if you look at it from all these perspectives, then you will see that we are by far at a disadvantage. That being said, this Israel-Hamas thing is a very sensitive thing altogether. you need to approach that with some kind of tact and finesse. One way or the other, when Hamas did the unthinkable, what I said was that they have beaten more than they can chew, and that Israel was going to retaliate more than in equal measure. And that is exactly what my prophecy has been. They have gone beyond their reach. Now, you see that when you go into the Israel-Hamas politics, you have to appreciate the fact that if a particular nation, every now and then, there is a refrain that they don't deserve to exist, they don't deserve to exist, then it means that they want to protect themselves. And that is something that they have done. If you look at it from a different perspective, in terms of where they find themselves on the map, the global map, Israel is playing the Champions League. It should tell you that they have the protection, right, of the powers that be. And that in itself makes them occupy a very unique position in the architecture of global politics. I think that what the president said, the world leaders must sit down and ponder about some of these things. He really made some poignant points that I believe that in the global politics, it will take a long period for them to digest all the issues that he raised. I think that he really, really spoke well. They were spot on, but some of them indeed will rattle some tail or feathers.
Right, let's begin to round up on the conversation, and I'll start off with you and then end with Professor Dr. Vladimir Nchidan. So on what needs to happen going forward now that we've made a lot of these bold speeches. Doc has begun to suggest that it needs to move beyond the talks, but in terms of structural ways where we can begin to benefit as a continent from these flowery speeches, what are your thoughts going forward as to what we can look forward to?
Should I be the one speaking?
Yes, you should, please.
Okay. So the point is that we need to put our money where our mouth is. I don't think they will turn around our economy for us. They won't do it because it is not in their interest to have us developed or become a developed nation. It will have to take a conscious effort by African leaders and leaders for that matter to be able to do so. It will not be handed to us on silver platter. We have seen so many conspiracy theories that have been churned out by some academics from the West that we are supposed to be the producers of raw materials and they're supposed to be the producers of finished product. And so unless it is a conscious effort and not just mere rhetorics by leaders of Africa who come and go, we will still remain as we are. Look at the way we are destroying our environment, all in the name of what? All these things in the end, when there is a disaster, a disease outbreak, what happens to us? We will still go out there asking and begging for something. But if we are not able to look inward and ensure that the right things are done, we don't eschew politics. The politics of nepotism will have to give way for meritocracy. If we make these conscious efforts, I think that by and large we'll be able to grow, but not, just an overnight kind of thing. It should be something. The petty politics is just too much. And if we do not see the larger picture, that it is not everybody who will have to be president, and that if one becomes, everybody must support to ensure that we grow, then I think that we'll just be going to the UN on a regular basis and be making beautiful flowery speeches that do not end anywhere.
Dr. Asante-Ocho, I appreciate you. Let me end with Dr. Vladimir Nchidan as well on this. And I mean, you've started speaking to a number of them, but in terms of persons who might not be familiar with how or what steps can be taken for some of these demands to begin to take concrete shapes for the continent to benefit, what are some of the things we can look out for?
Look, we have, if lip service to most of the things that we should do. The AU has been very lethargic where African issues are concerned, and we don't take bold collective actions. Like always, we wait for the big powers to tell us what to do. France has dictated the pace for a long time. Mrs. Kwao, once upon a time at the United Nations representing the AU, boldly spelled out, just like President Mahama has now boldly told everybody what he thinks about what is happening in the world. The following day, the AU withdrew the woman as our representative, just because France took exception to what she said. And she was talking for the whole of Africa, how France was exploiting the French-speaking countries. So it is about time we as Africans collectively acted as Africans. And in this, we must do what normally is done in international relations. Seek the support of like-minded countries. Seek the support of, say, Brazil, China, India, Russia. And you see, what China is doing is that China is showing itself big because it has the support now of Brazil, India, Russia, and they are even thinking about creating another World Bank, kind of. And everybody is shaking. And these are steps we need to be taking for ourselves. Why don't we have our own African ICC, International Criminal Court? And that if you watch out the 39 cases that had gone to the ICC, only one is non-African. I mean, come on. The AES has not shown us clearly that they are not happy that they are getting out of the ICC. Bold actions. Collectively, we will not die. I mean, my brother talked about Israel and President Bush said, if Israel did not exist, they would have invented it. So it's a country that was invented in order to be a Middle East country serving the interests of the West. If Hamas did what they did in October 2023, they didn't do that out of the blues. I mean, for how many years? 1948, 750,000 Palestinians were just thrown out of their land for Israel to be created. And we didn't create a corresponding country. And they have been subjugated for all these years. So they did that, and the future of it is that it will continue. Why will not the world, especially the Arab world, show anger? And we are pandering to the whims of the U.S. What did Iraq do before we attacked Iraq as a collective in 2003? What is, Israel doing? It's clear. An army well armed to the teeth fighting innocent persons without guns. Children, old age people, women being slaughtered. So we cannot sit now. Africa should take a collective action. Just like President Mahama was lamenting, there must be an action. In 1978, we took an action. The whole of Africa boycotted Israel. And it went down very well. So I believe in action. I believe in something that should show that we are angry. But these lamentations will go nowhere. We've lamented. Next year, we'll go and lament again.
Doc, thank you very much for speaking to us. That's Dr. Vladimir Chidanso speaking to us as well this evening here on Hot Edition, here on 3FM 92.7. And we'll get into a bit more details away from this particular subject matter onto the subject of Galamsey, because you would not believe this. Now, the Ghana Grid Company, GRIDCO, is raising grave concerns about growing threat of illegal mining and what it is posing to the country's electricity transmission network. Now, during a visit by Parliament's Energy Committee, GRIDCO management revealed that activities of illegal miners near transmission lines have become increasingly dangerous, with some Galamsey operators allegedly attacking and even shooting at personnel during maintenance work. Director of Systems Operations at GRIDCO, Engineer Hussein Adams, warned that if urgent security measures are not provided, the menace could compromise critical infrastructure. Now, he urged the public, particularly encroachers, to stay clear of transmission lines, warning that such practices not only disrupt GRIDCO's work, but also pose severe risks to the country's energy mix. And we can hear from him right now.
In fact, it's near disaster. Because, as we talked about, the line right of way, you need to clear it so that when you need to do maintenance on the line, you can go there. Now, the right-of-way clearing becomes lucrative to Galamseyers. And in a number of areas, our people go and see that overnight, people come and do their Galamseying activities very close to our towers. Now, the towers, you see them as just steel members, but they are carrying a lot of forces and weights. And so the foundation is really calculated. In fact, they do a lot of studies on the ground to design. Every tower foundation is different, depending on where it is. And I'm sure these Galamseyers don't know, but as you encroach close to the lands, we are coming to the point where, in fact, there are some towers that we have had to rush in to do some intermediary reinforcement. Unfortunately, there are some areas that even when our maintenance teams are going, they get shot at, and some of them have had to run away. And so we are trying to see and leverage and get engaged, because those areas is getting to points where GRIDCO alone cannot manage. And so we need support from all the forces to be able to.
And so that is one of the managers at GRIDCO. He is the director of system operations at GRIDCO, engineer Husseini Adams. Let me bring in my colleague, Joseph Armstrong Gold-Alogbe. He was following that parliamentary select committee on their tour. Armstrong, were you able to visit some of the sites to see for yourself what the damage is? Talk to us about these revelations and the reaction from the committee as well.
So, Mahama, today's visit just took us to the GRIDCO office at Tema. We did not go to the real site where the Galamsey Activities is affecting works of these GRIDCO personnel. We just went to the office just for working visit, but there are plans to visit some of these areas that the Deputy CEO actually spoke about for us to see for ourselves and see the extent of damage and how serious this extent of damage is causing the workers of GRIDCO. Minor.
And what was the reaction of the select committee when these revelations was made bare?
So this is an issue of Galamsey that all of us are aware, and so the select committee indeed said that now we've gone beyond Galamsey activities just affecting our water bodies. This time around is no longer affecting our water bodies, but it has gone beyond the water bodies and also now trying to destroy the very energy, the power that is being transmitted into our homes, so that if we allow these illegal miners, popularly known as Galamseyers, to continue with their activities, a time will come you go home and you don't have light, because the pylons that carries the light transmitting to your house will all be affected by the activities of the illegal miners. So the chair of the parliamentary select committee, that is Honorable Emmanuel Bejra, they said that it's about time that we take more serious efforts to ensure that issues of illegal mining is tackled head on. Honor.
Let's talk about tariffs, because I'm sure that came up as well during this working visit by the select committee. Talk us through what happened there and what the conversations were as well.
So from the GRIDCO, we went to the PRC where the issue of tariffs was discussed, So when we go there, even before the select committee even starts speaking, the executive director for the PRC indeed started even lamenting that, well, he knows definitely before we leave here, we are going to talk about the issue of tariffs, because that is what the public has been crying over for some time now. So he said that, well, before even the select committee begin to talk about it, he wants to make it clear that what we heard in the media space is not anything that has been agreed and concluded on yet. These are just proposals coming from the utility services. Hence, they are now engaging the public on whether or not, well, there's a need to increase the tariffs to that percentage. That is over 225 or
200 plus
percentage. Yeah. So he is saying that this is just proposal coming from the utility services, and that they are yet to engage the public and see if there is a need for them to come up with this increment. But then again, the members of the committee did not take it lightly at all, because according to them, all members of parliament, particularly those on the energy committee, were being heckled by their constituents that we know you are part of this committee. What is happening? Why you just took over office and here you are increasing? Or many people even believe that the thing has already been increased. So the members of the committee did say that in future, before you come up with such announcement in the public domain, you must first consult Parliament, particularly the members of the Committee on the Energy, so that at least both can sit and judge and agree on whether it is of essence to put it in the public domain before going out there, because this indeed has not gone down well with a lot of Ghanaians, which in return, the members of the committee are those that have suffered the consequences of it, Mahama.
Joseph, thank you very much for bringing us those details. That's my colleague Armstrong Gold-Alogbe providing a bit more in terms of details for us this evening here on Hot Edition as to exactly what's been happening when the Select Committee of Parliament visited two key energy stations, that's GRIDCO and then the utility monitor overseer, PURC, as well as the Public Utility Regulatory Commission as well. But let's move away from that and talk education, because there's growing frustration and anxiety among parents and guardians who throng the Ghana National Association of Teachers NAT Hall in Accra seeking to resolve placement challenges, but many left with more questions than answers. Noura Mohammed was at the NAT Hall and reports that what was meant to be a structured process is increasingly becoming very, very chaotic.
It's been more than a week since the release of the school placements by the Computerized School Selection and Placement System, CSSPS, and thousands of students who could not be placed or who were wrongly placed have trooping from across the country to the NAT Hall to resolve their problems. Now, over the week, we gathered that some of the problems included the placement of male students in all-girls schools and vice versa, changing from lower grade schools to upper grade schools, and changing schools within the same grade level but to another region.
Calling for a decentralized system, one father could not hide his frustration with the ongoing resolution process.
This placement issue started over a decade ago. We should have learned something from this. We are still repeating the same mistakes. This particular placement exercise should be decentralized so that at least people can do it. It shouldn't be centralized at one place. When it happens like that, we don't have, let's say, one or two people trying to place everybody. And we are many. Look at the population.
Emilia Aye, whose ward has special needs and cannot attend boarding school, says her child has been placed in one regardless.
Say, school placement in the third choice school demand STEM school.
My child was given her third choice when the placement was released, but we wanted a day school in the STEM program around the area. We reached out to the school and we were told to come to NAT Hall. When we came, they told us that school wasn't part of her choice, so they cannot change it. But my child is asthmatic and cannot be allowed to go far from home.
But Akurano was special case, meeting or asthmatic, meeting my name call far place. And see, me hope you send come back to me abuana. Another
parent, Philomena Tamaklu, who complained about the long wait time and wrongful placement, says her issue was eventually resolved. We have been here for long, and we were asked to get a letter from the school my child got. But the school he was given was not of his choice. He chose an auto mechanic course, but was given a different course in Prestia. He chose an auto mechanic course, but was given a different course in a school in Prestia. But God being so good today, they changed it for us.
Now the process continues until October 18th. When students are slated to report to school. But until then, we'll keep a close watch to see if things ease up a bit in the subsequent days.
That's Noura Mohammed with those details. Meanwhile, the Education Ministry says it has taken steps to streamline the activities of parent-teacher associations across the country. New guidelines are set to be rolled out to regulate how PTAs operate within schools, which is aimed at ensuring they effectively complement government efforts in maintaining a smooth and conducive academic environment. Education Minister Haruna Iddrisu made this known while addressing the media in the capital, Accra, and we can take a listen to him.
In every social group in Ghana is one that is to be shared, where parents support teachers and teachers support parents. For us, PTAs are to support improved learning outcomes and to provide for safe, secure learning environment. And I'm saying this by extension to every other civil society input in the provision of education and in the pursuit of policy.
That's the Education Minister, Haruna Idrisu. And now, from January 2026, a national pet vaccination card will be issued for every vaccinated dog or cat by the Veterinary Services Department. This will make rabies vaccination mandatory nationwide and ensure proper tracking, harmonized reporting, and reliable national data generation. Chief Veterinary Officer Dr. Emmanuel Alejikujo addressed journalists in Accra as Ghana joined the world, or the rest of the world, to mark World Rabies Day.
16,250 adults and 4,715 children from religious bodies have been sensitized through 99 churches and 22 mosques as faith-based platforms, while millions of community members have been reached through 72 media outlets to ensure sustained rabies prevention and contribute to the global agenda of zero human deaths from dog-mediated rabies by the year 2030. The Veterinary Services Directorate is introducing and reinforcing the following measures. 1. Mandatory vaccination and certification. I'm glad to announce to all that from January 2026, a national pet vaccination cards will be issued for every vaccinated dog or cat by the VSD. Private veterinary services provided. This measure will make rabies vaccination mandatory nationwide and ensure proper tracking, harmonized reporting, and reliable national data generation. 2. Dog and cat population surveys. Under this measure, district veterinary offices are initiating structured survey to establish accurate dog and cat population figures. This exercise will generate reliable national data to support evidence-based planning, resource allocation, and vaccination coverage.
That's Dr. Emmanuel Alejikujo is a Chief Veterinary Officer addressing the media in the capital, Accra. Will end with the United Nations or the United Youth Initiative for Africa, which has launched the Ghana Youth Climate Action Roadmap, described as a blueprint of ambition. It was developed by youth from across all 16 regions of the country and outlines pathways for advocacy, green entrepreneurship, skills development, and community-level climate solutions. There's more in this report put together by my colleagues.
The Minister of State for Climate Change and Sustainability, Baba Isifo, has urged Ghanaian youth to move from the sidelines to the center of climate action, stressing the country's climate future hinges on their leadership, innovation, and resilience. In a speech read on his behalf at the opening of the 5th Local Conference of Youth Ghana 2025, the minister said commitments under the Paris Agreement would remain meaningless unless young people are empowered to drive their implementation. Launching the roadmap, the minister indicated it shows the world that Ghana's young people are not waiting on the sidelines but are stepping forward to shape their own future. Meanwhile, the lead convener of the conference, Noah Bugri, underscored the importance of the gathering in amplifying the voices of young people across the country on climate change. Bugri noted that the conference has made significant strides, including the establishment of the Youth Climate Council, which serves as a governing body for youth organizations in the climate space.
Basically, we have connected what donor priorities are. So what are the donors looking to do in the space? Say UNDP, IOM, or whatever we have. And also diplomatic missions like the embassies and all. we've decided that we wanted to consolidate what they are looking to do from now to 2030. And then secondly, also, the decision was to also find out what is government trying to do in the environment space for the next 4 years. Once we decided this, we were able to find synergies between these two, and then we developed what we call pathways that the youth can follow.
Co-founder of the Mountain Research Institute said e-waste could fetch the youth more money and therefore encouraged policy shift.
It doesn't matter whether they are in Ghana or India, the value is the same. So the students sitting from Presec, when you see a sachet lying on the ground or a television casing lying on your campus, how do you see it? As a waste or as a resource? You think that is waste because water can collect inside the mosquitoes, so we have to carry it and go and throw it away or set fire into it. The scrap dealer sees it as potential avenue for money making.
That was a report put together. I mentioned that was our last, but there's some news just coming through where a 45-year-old man has been apprehended by the Greater Accra Regional Police for impersonating a soldier. The suspect, who was found wearing military gear and extorted money within the Aboso-Kai enclave. According to sources, the individual was found for the past 2 months going around where his suspicious behavior raised red flags. Further investigation revealed that he had no affiliation with the military. The Greater Accra Regional Director of Public Relations, Juliana Obing, urged the public to be vigilant and report any suspicious activity to the police. Let's hear from her.
On 19th May 2024, the police received information about a violent incident at a residence. Officers proceeded to the scene and found a 39-year-old female identified as Alberta Hagan, together with her 3 children, all lying in a pool of blood in their room. Police inspected the bodies and detected that one of the children was alive, but with multiple deep cuts on his head and blood oozing from his ear. Also,
apologies for the wrong sound insert, but we'll bring you Juliana Obing's sound a lot later. But right now, we can make way for the very latest from the world of sports here on the bulletin, as with regards all of the matters that's been happening to you. But even before sports will make their way here as well, business is the latest to bring us the very latest, and then we'll get details from there pretty shortly as well. But even as we wait to do that, let's hear from President Mahama one last time on outdated funding challenges, amongst many other things, during his address earlier on today.
The United States in Gaza must stop. The crimes in Gaza must stop. Madam President, I also want to draw particular attention to the conflict in Sudan, which this body has described as the world's largest humanitarian crisis. 12 million people have had to flee their homes. And when we speak of migration, we refer to the 12 million new Sudanese refugees, whom we as a global community should be willing to assist in much the same way that many member nations readily assisted new refugees coming out of Ukraine. Let's dispense with the euphemisms and dog whistles and speak frankly. It is not a mystery that when leaders of Western nations complain of their migration problems, they are often referring to immigrants from the global south. But many of those immigrants are climate refugees. And interestingly, the global north emits 75% more greenhouse gases than the global south. However, the effects of climate change are more severe in the global south because we lack the resources to address them effectively. And so when the desert encroaches on our villages and towns and they become unlivable, we are forced to flee. Wasan Shiri, a Somali-born prophet, a Somali-British poet born in Kenya to Somalian refugee parents, was London's first youth poet laureate. She writes in her poem titled Home. And it says, you have...
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Business Segment on Hot Edition. Coming up tonight, Ghana secures key debt restructuring deal with the United Kingdom, paving way for infrastructure projects. I am Asiedu-Dartey. This headline and other stories lined up for you. Please stay. Ghana has signed a bilateral debt restructuring agreement with the United Kingdom, a deal worth $256 million. The debt deal with the UK is expected to pave way for the infrastructure projects. The following 3 Business News Desk report has more.
The agreement, signed by Minister for Finance Dr. Christabel and UK Trade Commissioner for Africa John Humphrey, is the third such pact under the G20 Common Framework. This follows similar agreement with France and the Export-Import Bank of China, and it is a significant step towards restoring Ghana's debt sustainability. Beyond the immediate debt relief, the agreement unblocks funding from UK Export Finance for 5 major infrastructure projects that had been stalled. These projects are Bogatanga-Boko Palmer-Chrome Road Project, modernization of the Komfanochi Teaching Hospital, Obechebi-Lamte Interchange, and Ancillary Works Project Phase 2. Construction of Phase 1 of the Tema-Aflao Road project, and redevelopment and modernization of Kumasi Central Market. Dr. Forsing reaffirmed government's commitment to fiscal discipline and accelerating economic growth. For his part, UK Trade Commissioner for Africa John Humphrey praised the deal as a landmark in Ghana-UK relations, emphasizing that it shows international confidence in Ghana's 24-hour economy and big push initiatives.
And that was a 3 Business News Desk report on Ghana securing key debt restructuring deal with the United Kingdom. Now to more stories. Ghanaian industries risk losing their competitive edge if electricity tariffs continue to rise. That's a warning from the Executive Director for the Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy, Benjamin Insia. Speaking to 3 Business, he says the latest 1.14% hike announced by the PURC will raise production cost and make it harder for the local firms to compete at home and abroad. The Public Utilities Regulatory Commission has announced a 1.14% increase in electricity tariffs effective October 1. The Commission says the move is necessary to maintain service delivery and reflects prevailing cost. But the Executive Director of the Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy, Benjamin Insia, warns that the decision could have a negative ripple effect through the economy, with households and industries bearing the brunt.
If wages remain constant at the household level, savings are going to contract because savings will now be rechanneled into paying for utilities. With respect to industries, cost of operations are going to go high. Most of our industries, holding other factors constant, may not be very competitive, especially with respect to their output, may not be competitive either locally or on the external market. And that may also lead to cuts on employment.
Insia also questions the fairness of the tariff adjustment. He argues that the PURC's resolution contradicts the very act that empowers it, insisting the Commission must act in ways that protect and not burden consumers.
When there is over-recovery or windfall as a result of the appreciation of the cedi against the dollar, the electricity end user is not made to benefit from this particular windfall or over recovery. However, when there is an under recovery, the electricity end user is made to pay for it. I think that's not fairness, and that goes contrary to the act that established, which is the 538 that established PURC. They must be fair, balanced in favor of both utilities as well as electricity end users locally.
That was Benjamin Insia, the Executive Director for SEMSE. That will be all for business news right here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 FM. For more business stories, please check out our website on 3news.com. I am Asiedu-Dartey. Sports News is up next.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the sports segment here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Let's start off from news coming in, and former Black Satellite coach Desmond Afei has been appointed as the new head coach of the national under-23 men's team, the Black Meteors, underscoring the FA's commitment to continuity and transition of youth players in the senior national teams. Now he steps into the role with a proven track record of success at youth level and experience at the highest tier of Ghana football. Afei, who currently serves as the assistant coach of the Black Stars, enjoyed an impressive spell with Ghana's under-20 side when he won the African Games. He will be assisted by Yao Preko and then Baba Nuhu Malam as assistant coaches. Well, to our next story, where we talk about Asiedu-Dartey. Now, he's returned from his ACL injury with the bank, putting up a man of the match performance against Nantes over the weekend. Now, he says that he's looking forward to the season and achieving great things with the club.
My personal goals is to have a lot of minutes, start games as I do before my injury, and my goal today is to give everything with the team so that we can qualify for this Europa, because when it's a club that always play this Europa. My last 2 seasons we couldn't qualify for Europa, and my goal today is to give everything, to trade harder, to give my best so that we can all put everything together to qualify for this Europa and play more minutes. Yeah.
Well, that was Asiedu-Dartey bringing an end to the sports segment here on Hot Edition, and then also wrapping up Hot Edition here on 3FM 92.7. We'll be back again tomorrow to bring you the latest updates from the country, the continent, and the globe at large.